Welcome to your favorite news channel, Gaming Space. We are really happy to have you another day with us. Today, we are going to talk about two crazy stories related to video games. We also have two really interesting interviews with some victims telling us how they feel. And finally, we will have some fascinating facts and the latest news about video games nowadays. Stay with us so you can listen to all the information that we have prepared for you. First, my peer Natasha is going to tell us about this crazy video game that is causing some weird effects on kids. We are going with you, Natasha.
Good morning, and thank you, Andrea. Now, discoveries have shown a video game that gets kids acting like the main characters in it, and the overwhelming majority of parents around the country have already communicated with authorities about this. This event started 4 days after the game was released, exactly on Friday the 13th, and apparently the side effects show after playing for an entire night. For this, we have contacted one of the callers of that night to answer some questions.
Well, we are now with Mrs. Martha, who reported to the authorities what appears to be a strange behavior in her teenage daughter. She claims she's under the influence of the main character named Super Lazy Student. Hi, so tell us, Mrs. Martha, how is your daughter behaving?
Thank you for having me. As you can see, my daughter will not get out of bed unless it's for going to the bathroom. I even have to bring her food, otherwise she will starve. Also, she has not showered in weeks and takes her classes under the covers. She looks exactly like the characters in the game.
Okay, thank you. But are you sure it is not just depression, Mrs. Martha?
These reports should not surprise us. It is known that behavior can be affected by video games and television. Just as a study of Iowa State University revealed, children's games with violent content increase hurtful and decrease helpful behavior. Nevertheless, should this continue to happen to more kids, extreme measures from the government should be implemented. Now it is time for another story. Back to you again, Mrs. Goban.
And now we have the second story of the day. A girl found living in a cyber cafe a decade later. What happened? A 14-year-old girl had an argument with her parents, and she ended up leaving her house. Her parents didn't hear from her for about 10 years. She was found in 2015 living at a cyber cafe, playing the multiplayer shooter Crossfire. She paid for her living expenses with money made at working at various cafes and donations from other people. Tiago Manuel directly states that the girl had a fake ID, who was found by the police and had to pay a fine of over $131. Wow, this story is really impressive. Who can live for 10 years at a cyber cafe? This girl must love the video games in order to leave her home and leave everything. Now we have this interview with the father of a young man who is only playing and has ignored school.
Hello, I'm so excited to do this interview. Here, here we are in the house of Alexis. He is the father of a children who has been developing an addiction to video games. To protect our guest identity, we are going to cover his face. And first, we are going to begin with some questions. How can you tell me how do you begin to realize that your child was addicted to video games?
Yeah, thank you so much. And first, he started playing for many hours, and over time, he wanted to buy more and more accessories in that game, so he started spending a lot of my money.
And what is the most impressive thing that your child has done to keep playing?
Oh, that's a good one. He has present some aggressive behaviors, and one day he even used my credit card secretly just to keep buying things for that game.
I have heard a lot of cases like yours. Certainly, he must have spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
And finally, could you give us some tips to prevent children from developing an addiction to video games?
Of course, I can do that. It is important to establish limits and game schedules so that they can have time to carry out their responsibilities and obligations in their homes.
Thank you for telling us a little bit of your story and for sharing your experience. And now we are going back to the studio. Don't leave us because we have some really exciting news for those who love video games.
Now we have some really exciting news to those who love PlayStation. On November 12th, the new PlayStation is coming out. Sony point out that there will be two versions, the digital edition and the PlayStation 5. The main two differences between these two are the price and the 4K UHD Blu-ray disc drive. The PS5 digital edition does not include a disc drive, and it costs about $400, while the PS5 does, and it costs about $500. Sammy Baker argues that the PS5 will give you a little bit more flexibility, allowing you to use a combination of physical and digital media. If you own any retail PS4 games, then you will be able to play this. If you plan to buy it, you will have to make an analytical reflection, and the decision will depend on your tastes. I think this can be a great Christmas present as the day approaches. However, it can cause both children and adults to become isolated, especially because the COVID cases are increasing again, and we must stay at home. Were parents not to become strict, more kids will become aggressive. Now, my peer Natasha is going to talk about some politics of video games.
For this section, we want to remind you that according to the National Autonomous University of Mexico, other called UNAM, Mexico is the first consumer of video games in Latin America. Video games have become increasingly popular in the country, to the point that the Mexican Esports Federation was founded. This federation is endorsed by the National Sports Commission. The objective is to create a team to represent the country in the most important international tournaments, with the opportunity of them being held inside of the territory. Miranda Perea further asserts that there are barriers that interfere with the development of video game industry in Mexico, such as stereotypes, lack of investment, and technological development.
In other news, according to the journal .ie, Ireland is far behind the curve, as they said, on gambling laws as warnings sounded on insidious loot boxes in video games. What are these loot boxes, you might say? In video games, loot boxes contain extra content that a player must pay actual money for, as in online games, of course. And they are common in popular games such as FIFA and Fortnite. In the latest FIFA game, for example, a mode called Ultimate Team allows players to create their own team of footballers and play against other players around the world. By playing games against others and the computer, they can earn virtual coins to try better players for their team. This is a more difficult and time-consuming method, but players can also use real money to buy these packs. These packs can cost anything from €1 to €10, and sometimes more for a special one-off packs. The packs may contain a Ronaldo or a Messi, but it's extremely rare. In fact, the game tells you how likely it is to pull one of the highest rated cards for each pack. The problem here is that this cannot be considered as e-commerce, because one thing is where you know the thing you're buying in advance, another thing is when you put up a stake and you don't know the outcome of what the thing will be. This can be considered more as a gambling. So laws are required to control these actions. That's why steps have been taken all around Europe to stop the use of these loot boxes. Just last month, a court in the Netherlands took a decision from the country's gambling authority that could mean a fine up to 10 million euros for the EA, this video game company. And then in Belgium, authorities there have found that some paid for loot boxes in games amounted to a gambling under Belgian law. In conclusion, a change in law would be needed if loot boxes were to be categorized as such.
And this was all for today's news at the gaming space. Parents, remember to establish some boundaries to your children when it comes to video games. Make sure to not let them exceed on gaming and play for hours straight, especially at night. And for the grown-ups out there, remember to check up on your peers more often. Do not isolate yourself. Remember, it is not healthy. Even though we spread awareness of the disadvantages video games might bring, we vastly recommend you to keep on gaming. And if you do not, don't be afraid to give it a try. Stay safe throughout the pandemic and play video games. Thank you once again. This was Gaming Space, your space. See you tomorrow.